we definitely want to thank everybody for showing up today. It's a big crowd. Obviously, it was loved by a lot of people, and this is something that is a celebration. It's not a time to be sad. It's a celebration of life, and we want to do that, and we want to make sure that he goes out the way he wanted to go out. So I'm going to start with his bio. Bob Fink was born December 20th, 1935 in Russell, Kansas. His mother Florence and father Shailene raised Bob and his older brother Jack on a farm outside of Paradise, Kansas. And yes, there is a Paradise, Kansas. Bob attended Paradise High School, where he was a star basketball and baseball player. That's where he met Mary, his high school sweetheart, lifelong partner of 57 years. They got married after Mary graduated high school, and 2.5 years later, she gave birth to their first daughter, Lucinda. 2.5 years later, the second daughter followed, Pablo and Tanya. As a young family, they lived in a purple trailer house next to the gas station that Bob owned and operated for his family. This is when gas was only 18 cents a gallon. Every summer, the Fink family, like every honest baseball fanatical family, took a 2-week vacation to Kansas City to watch the A's play. They always managed to be there when the Yankees were in town. During these trips, the two young and well-dressed daughters were strongly encouraged to collect baseball autographs from players to which they could not be denied, including Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle. In 1966, enticed by some actual landscape, Bob and Mary left Paradise and moved their family to Colorado. In Colorado, they added a surprise to the young family with the addition of their son Patrick, their baseball player. The Fink family settled into a nice 3-bedroom house here in Edgewater and sent their kids to Lumberg Elementary and Jefferson High School. Bob went to a technology school to learn about electronics and went on to work for an electronic parts company as a salesman. This is when TVs actually had tubes. After putting 20 years in the electronics industry, Bob decided to move on to something new and got a job working in the aircraft parts department for Continental Airlines. This job turned out to be fortuitous for him and Mary, giving them access to free flights, and he obviously took advantage of those. Bob and Mary traveled all over the world, places like Germany, France, Ireland, Brazil, Costa Rica, and Hawaii. They were accompanied most of the time by their best friends, Don and Shirley Moran. Sometimes they would go to New York City for a Broadway play or San Francisco for a Sunday afternoon lunch. And of course, they traveled anywhere in the country to watch their beloved Red Sox, Colorado Buffaloes, Colorado Rockies, and especially their grandchildren to watch them play sports. They had sports gear for all weather conditions. The only downside to Bob's job at Continental was the fact that he was forced to relocate to Houston, Texas for 6 years. While in Texas, Bob would do extraordinary travel home nearly every weekend to see Mary. Bob worked in Houston until he retired in 2002 and then moved back to Colorado. As nutty as they were for their CU Buffs, or Boston Red Sox, or Colorado Rockies, they were even more nutty for their kids and their grandkids' sports. Bob and Mary took their daughter Tiny, who was an amazing baton twirler, across the country, coming home with a car full of trophies each time. They tirelessly attended all their son Patrick's baseball, basketball, and football games. They hardly ever missed their grandchildren's lacrosse, hockey, or baseball games, even if they had to drive to another state. After Bob retired, he got his ultimate job as an usher for the Colorado Rockies, where he received numerous awards, including Rookie Usher of the Year during his 17 years with the Rockies. When the baseball season ended, Bob would usher all the Avalanche games, where he also received numerous Employee of the Month awards. It was at that time that Bob and Mary got a new dog and named him Fenway, after the Boston Red Sox baseball stadium. Fenway was one spoiled dog. Bob was devastated when Mary passed away in 2013. After spending a lifetime together, nonetheless, he continued living a good life. He maintained his near impeccable attendance as an usher for the Rockies and the Avalanche. Barbara Toby and Bob started to spend a lot of time together. They both worked the Avalanche games. Together, they formed a wonderful companionship. Bob and Barbara spent a lot of time together and enjoyed eating out and taking trips to Blackjack to play the slot machines. Barbara became part of the family. Bob spent the last day of his life how he wanted. He went up gambling in Blackjack during the day with Barbara, and both of them naturally and won some money. And in the evening, he went out to his favorite hangout at the Edgewater Inn, where he drank beer, talked to Bubs, bragged about all his buddies about Ida, his new great-granddaughter. There is no doubt Bob lived a wonderful life and will be greatly missed by his family and friends.
favorite songs, I have an attachment because I was friends with a fellow named Utah Phillips, the golden voice of the great Southwest, who was once king of the hobos. So you just need to know that this song touches me too. Trailer for sale rent, rooms to let, no phone, no pets. I ain't got no cigarettes, but 2 ounces of bush's room. Don't let 8 to 12 I'm a man of means by no means. King of the road, just occurred to me, might suggest how old this song is by the boss of the road. Third boxcar, train, destination, old worn out cement shoes. I don't pay no union dues, I smoke old stogies that I found. Short but not too big around. Man of means by no means. King of the road. I know every engineer on every tree. All of the children and all of their names. Every hand out in every town. Every door that ain't locked, nobody's around. I say, rooms of that 50 cents. No phone, no pets. Ain't got no cigarettes, but 2 hours of pushing through by 8 to 12 for me. I'm a man of means by no means. King of the road. King of the road. Yeah.
Many of you knew Bob Peep was a character. He liked to wear bright colors, loved his family, danced the polka, loved beer, had a passion for sports, especially baseball, and enjoyed any of the company that he would come across the week. Bob grew up a country boy. In high school, he belonged to the Future Farmers of America. But in his head, he felt like he belonged on a manicured field with a pitcher's mound, opposed to manure spreaders and plows. School was not exactly his thing, and his grades reflected it. It wasn't that Bob was unintelligent, rather he preferred to skip class to go throw baseball through a rubber tire that he hung from a tree. Practicing for the next basketball or baseball game was more important to him than the periodic table of elements or anything like that. For his favorite pastime in high school, Bob and his buddies would tip over outhouses on Friday nights. It was in high school that he met his life partner Mary, who was a cheerleader. Together, Bob and Mary traveled all over the world. They had good traveling buddies with their best friends, Don and Shirley Moran. They had so many stories and met so many people. One time got caught bringing back painkillers for Mary's aunt from Mexico and was detained. They also made the newspaper one time when they got held up and robbed at gunpoint in New Jersey. During these travels, they ran into many famous people. Michael Jackson at Disneyland, Eric Clapton in Tego, and O.J. Simpson at the airport. They would strike up a conversation with somebody and anybody. By the time the conversation ended, they would have tickets to another game in another state. Bob's life really revolved around sports. He played, coached, ushered, traveled, and cheered. At his own emotional and sometimes physical expense, he was definitely loyal to his teams. One time he was attending the Boston Red Sox game at Yankee Stadium, and of course, decked out in his Red Sox gear with a chant of Red Sox suck, broke out. So Bob, unable to remain silent, jumped up from his seat and began to yell, Yankees suck, Yankees suck. The next thing he knew, he was getting bombarded by hot dogs, popcorn, and beer. He walked out of that stadium looking like a mess. For many years, there was a heated family rivalry between the Finks and the Kansas relatives, the Fort Millers and the Clem Yankees. who were die-hard Jayhawks fans. Every year they would travel to each other's states to watch the annual game, and there was a lot of writing on it. Money, bragging rights, and basically self-worth. On one occasion after the Bucks unfortunately lost to KU in Lawrence, a group of KU fans with a marching band were rubbing the victory in Bob's face. So naturally, at the age of 7, Bob decided he was going to moon the band. He didn't get any hot dogs or beer thrown in him at that time, but his family was relatively probably embarrassed by that situation. For any Kansas relatives that are here today, I'm sure Bob would like to remind you the all-time record is 42-23 in the Bucks' favor. However, Bob received the most abuse from Mary. Mary was known to get extremely nervous during sports games that she would scream, scratch, and claw the people surrounding her, especially when the games came down to the wire. Bob often took the brunt end of it. The closer the game was, the more scratch marks he would get. She was at her most aggressive watching their grandkids play hockey and lacrosse. Although he was highly invested in sport, and at times the outcome game seemed like a matter of life and death, he knew that it was really just a game. He could see it in an assembly of guys wearing different colors and running around in tights. As an usher at Coors Field for the Colorado Rockies, Bob would always give anyone wearing Yankee or Nebraska Cornhuskers colors a hard time. He would tell them they are not welcome in his section with a real stern look on his face. Then he would smile and strike up a friendly conversation before his decision. Bob and Mary were pretty much 100% certain that their firstborn kid was going to be a boy and also a baseball star. They even had a name picked out. He was going to be named Brooks, after the third baseman, Brooks Robinson from the Baltimore Orioles. Life threw them a curveball when out came their first daughter, Lucinda. They quickly had to locate a name book and were hard-pressed on the time to come up with a girl's name. Lucinda, being the rebel she was, often saw things differently than her dad. She spent a lot of time around the house, not so much by choice, but rather by having her going out privileges frequently revoked by Bob and Mary. Nonetheless, Bob was always there for her. He helped her out with everything, whether it was helping her with her furniture, in and out of her many apartments during her college years, filling up her gas tank when she'd run out at the most remarkable time in places imaginable. Bob struck out again on his little baseball player with his second daughter, Tanya. But he did get his great baton throwing. Bob drove her everywhere to practice and to compete in baton throwing competitions. He drove her to the gym every day after work, where she would practice for 3 hours and Bob would just shoot hoops. Tanya got a scholarship and was the baton thrower for CU and performed at Folsom Field during the halftime game of the Bucks. Of course, Bob and Mary started to go to all the CU football games to watch Tanya perform and became the best CU fans that could possibly happen. This is where Bob actually started his ushering career. Years later, he retired from work, took up ushering for the Colorado Rockies very seriously. He rarely missed a day during his 17-year stint in men's section 205 the entire time. Bob got his baseball player with the birth of his son, Pat. He was eager to teach him all about the game. They butted heads once in a while. In one particular memory, when Pat was in high school, as a lot of us teenage boys want to man up to our fathers every now and then, right? And we want to challenge them. Pat was with a group of friends when Bob came out of the house. It started with a few words being an exchange, and then escalated into a fist fight between Pat and Bob. Pat's friends started cheering on Bob to kick Pat's ass. At one point during the scuffle, Pat got a good shot right into Bob's gut. Bob clutched over his hand and pretended to go down. Pat unwillingly came closer to check on his father. Before he knew it, Bob rose up and gave him a bruising uppercut across his face, which I'm sure Pat still feels today. Bob always laughed when he told that story. I probably heard that story a good dozen times over the last 5 years. Bob completely adored Pat and was always there for him. He coached Little League baseball teams, drove him everywhere, and was a father figure to many of his friends. When Pat was in his 6th grade, Bob provided Pat and a friend with the best day any young man could ask for. They started off the day watching Earl Campbell play the Broncos at Mile High, ate Kentucky Fried Chicken, and then at night they attended a Kiss concert. It was Pat's very first concert. Bob wasn't too happy with it because he didn't really understand the music at that time, so I'm sure he threw that out there. Bob himself had a limited musical library. He often drive his wife and kids crazy singing the same songs ad nauseum. They included Home on the Range, Hang Down Your Head, Tom Doolin. Bob's favorite polka song was In Heaven There Is No Beer, and That's Why We Drink It Here. Bob took those lyrics to heart. After Mary passed, Bob was fortunate to find a companion to spend time with, in Barbara Toby, who was also a fellow usher at CU. She would become a valued companion as she Avalanche game, going up to Blackhawk to gamble, enjoying time eating out. Barbara and Bob were both adopted by their respective families, and both were happy to see Bob and Barbara enjoy their time together. Between all the laughs, travels, beers, friends and family, Bob truly had a good life. Not many folks get a chance to live a life so full as Bob lived with Mary and having companionship later in life with Barbara. We are grateful for all the things he did for us and all for all the memories. When you hear that crowd in the back, see you fight song, or see the Boston Red Sox take the field, remember, Bob is cheering, right there with you. And you know, we're there, just might be, here in heaven. So at this time, the family would like anyone to come up that has a memory about Bob and like to share with the group. I'd like to start with one guy most, and that's Mr. Richard Keegan. Come on up.
Morning. My name is Rich Keegan. The last time I was here at Crown Hill was 6 years ago at Mary's Memorial. Here we are back again for my good friend Bob's service. How wonderful for both services to be a celebration of life. I first met Bob in May of 1987, 31 years ago. We both started working in the aircraft parts part department for Continental Airlines about the same time. Bob worked in an area in stores called Parts Control, which all the unserviceable parts were sorted and dispersed. Bob's job back then was to pick up and deliver the parts from the repair shops in the hangar. Bob was very possessive about the vehicle he was provided to do his job. So possessive, in fact, that he had the only key to that bright yellow golf cart he would drive around. It was like it belonged to him personally. And just so there was no confusion with whose vehicle this golf cart belonged to, the words Fink Memorial were stenciled on the back and sides of black spray paint. Bob took a great deal of pride in his job and loved what he did. He made a lot of friends, not only in stores, but in the maintenance department as well. He developed a great rapport with a lot of the mechanics, and the ones he knew thought the world of Bob. I did too. In December of '94, Uncle Bob, I used to call him that a lot, a co-worker, Bob DeHaver, and I were transferred to Houston at the same time. As Stapleton was closing, DIA was about to open. We all lived in the same apartment complex. Bob commuted every week back and forth from Houston to Denver to be with the love of his life, Mary, until he retired in 2002. He worked graveyard most of the time he was in Houston, so he could have 3 days off to travel and be home in Denver. He would tell me how his commute went each week. Most of the time he was lucky flying standby, sometimes not so. He would say, I had to go to Cleveland to get back, or Dallas, or Atlanta, or Vegas, or LA, and even Newark on one occasion, I recall. I don't think he ever missed getting to work on Monday night when his shift started. Bob was extremely conscientious about his job and loved working for the airline. He, of course, didn't like the weekly commute, but never complained about it because it was what he had to do to be home each week with his Mary. When he retired, he asked if I was interested in any of his furniture, one of which was a very loud, bright orange recliner. It was comfortable, and it sure did light up the room. When I asked how much he wanted for the pieces, he said, I don't want anything. And this was just one of the many times I was on the receiving side of Bob's generosity. That was my friend Bob. In the late 90s, Bob and I and a few of us from work went to the Astrodome to see the Rockies play the Astros. Of course, the Denver guys were rooting for the Rockies, and Bob was rooting a tad bit more than the rest of us, and was getting some strong looks from the Astros fans sitting around us. And that didn't bother Mr. Fink one iota as he continued to cheer the Rockies and badmouth the Astros. Some of this jeering from Bob might have been due to a beverage that was being served from one of the vendors walking up and down the aisle. I'm not certain here, just saying it might have been a possibility. Not sure who won the game, but we all had a good time and a lot of laughs, and that was Bob. Back in '94 and '95, when Bob started his weekly commute, I had permanently moved to Houston. My daughter and her family live in Lakewood, just up the street from Morris Park. When I was up visiting them over the years, I would meet Bob back down at the park and get caught up on things as he walked Fenway around the loop. Our get-togethers occurred more often after Mary had died. Bob didn't miss his morning walks with Fenway very often. He would collect stray tennis balls from the courts and take them home. He had accumulated several good-sized bags in the garage and offered me as many as I wanted a couple years ago. I took him up on his offer since my girlfriend, who is also a Mary, owns a border collie named Junior that absolutely lives for chasing and retrieving tennis balls. I think of Bob every time I chuck one of those balls. I know I mentioned Bob's generosity. I wanted to add how thoughtful towards others he was and how grateful I am for how Bob treated two of my grandkids. Bob would get a lot of freebies, awards, and accolades from all his years as an usher at Coors. He gave my grandkids a blanket, baseballs, pins, and bobblehead doll. And Bob thought the world of Hayden and Piper and would always visit with them when they crossed paths at the park. He was touched when he read their thank you notes, and so was I. A while after Mary died, I was still in Houston then, and we were talking on the phone. Bob wanted to hear my thoughts and my opinion on how I felt about him possibly dating a gal he had known for a while. He had wondered if it was too soon after Mary had died, and I told him only he could know the answer to that, but I certainly approved and knew if he was thinking about it, it would be good for him. Luckily, he acted on that decision and had several years with a wonderful gal, Barbara. I'd like to offer my heartfelt sympathy to Cindy and Todd and Pat and all the family for the loss of their dad and their grandpa and their great-grandpa. I'm very grateful to have known you for as long as I did, and I know you are too. So this part is for you, Bob, the old goat. I'll miss our friendships of 31 years, our years at Continental Airlines, lunches at the taverns, fish and chips at the Baker Street pub, talking on the phone every week about our families, the Buffs, the Rockies, and those Red Sox we so loved. I'll miss stopping to visit with you by Section 205 at Coors Field before Rockies came. I'll miss telling people who didn't know you that your gruff facial expression at times was only on the surface and you had a heart of gold or just a big teddy bear. I'll miss those walks around the park with Fenway. I know it is inevitable that with life comes death, and I was so very fortunate to have known you, to have had you as my friend. And now when I'm at Morris Park, walking my daughter's dogs or playing with the grands, I'll stop and sit on that bench on the west side of the park, and that bench that will now be not only Mary's bench, but Bob and Mary's bench. So Uncle Bob, put another dollar in the slot and have another easy street on me. I hope to see you someday at another ballpark. It's been my pleasure knowing you.
Very nice.
Anyone else prepared to come up and speak on about Bob?
Good morning. I'm Sandy Cedar with the Rockies, and I had the pleasure of knowing Bob for 17 seasons. And the staff that is here knows that I hate microphones, and I hate talking into them, so bear with me. I was going to write some stuff down, but most everything that you've already heard from, from Corey and from the other gentleman is true. Bob, family. Family was first. Friends, my goodness, this is impressive. I am impressed. He will be dearly missed at Coors Field. I do remember one story that I'd like to share, and it was with Fenway. Years ago, when we had Pause at the Park, which is now Bark in the Park, Pause in the Park was different. And we as an organization were trying to figure out how we were going to bring home dogs and people into our park. And Bob was ecstatic about it because Mary was bringing Fenway. And I'm like, when he told me that, I went, I'm sorry, what's your dog's name? He said, Fenway. And the look on my face must have been, you're a Rockies employee, right? He goes, I'm truly a Rockies fan, but Fenway's special. I did get to meet Mary and Fenway that day, and Fenway was decked out in the cutest little garb. I'm not kidding, it was adorable. But they had a good time. And just watching Bob's expressions and how he talked about his family, I know that that is very, very important to him. And there was another story I wanted to share too, that Bob was in a section of the ballpark where home run batting practice balls would get hit into. And I know most of the crew that is here knows that when you're checking your seats and wiping them down prior to the opening, you need to be cautious about what's happening behind you on the field. Needless to say, Bob was targeted numerous times with those home run balls. And one actually hit him on the top of his head, and he was adamant about not getting checked out. And I personally went over, and Suzanne is here, I went over and I physically walked him to first aid to have him checked out. And the whole time, walking from 205 to 133 behind home plate, he was berating me. He was telling me I'm okay, I don't know why you're walking with me, I just want to get you checked out. And it skinned the top of his head. And there were a couple other balls that hit him during the seasons, but once he got hit again, he said, call Sandy. But he will definitely be missed in our ballpark. And I know the season ticket holders and the guests that walk by to see him specifically will definitely have a few stories to share with our staff. So, thank you.
Paul Gallegos.
Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Gallegos. I own a salon, and I've been doing Bob's hair for quite a while, actually. I met Bob and Ricky, well, we found him really through another stylist named Amy, and when she passed away, I took over the Finks. So some stories I have about Bob really are just genuinely very, very funny. One thing is his sense of humor. Bob's sense of humor is just so amazing. I'm one person who's punctual, so getting to work maybe 5 minutes before I'm really supposed to be there, but my associate's always there, and Bob was always 15 minutes ahead of schedule. So I walk in my 5 minutes ahead of schedule thinking I'm proud of myself for being on time, and he's like, it's about time. And that happened often, actually. So my last time to see Bob was November the 30th, and I actually got to work 15 minutes ahead of schedule. So I beat him. And we had a really great conversation. Actually, one thing that he really talked about was his great-granddaughter. And he was just so thrilled about Thanksgiving, the dinner, and just the lovely time he had. So just know that. And I can honestly say that I'm gonna miss Bob a lot. Every 4 weeks, right on time, punctual, and he was. And it's just gonna be a different time. Every 4 weeks, that'll definitely be great for sure. So I can tell too by the turnout that a lot of you probably feel the same. So thank you, and love you guys.
Larry?
Good morning. 20 years ago, my wife and I moved from Pennsylvania, the home of the Amish in Lancaster County. We decided to come to Colorado, changing a life, and we certainly had one. We came to Denver, and I met Bob at Coors Field, as many people have, and we had a great time there. I worked there for a bunch of years, left there, and went to Pepsi. Sure enough, Bob shows up at Pepsi. And luckily, I'm lucky enough to work in club level in Pepsi, and I got to see Bob every night. And he was punctual, as usual, and we had a great time together. And Bob was always wanting to come over and ask about the family, and we had other discussions, and one of the discussions was towns in Pennsylvania. The Amish have some great names for their towns. Birmingham, Goodville, New Holland, and the one he loved the best, Intercourse. I have no idea why he liked that so much. Every time he knew I was going to go home back to Pennsylvania, he'd say, "Where were you?" And of course I said, "Bob, I went to Intercourse." My wife is originally from there, so she, her driver's license had Intercourse, Pennsylvania, and so whenever she was stopped for anything by a policeman or anybody, and they saw the driver's license, Intercourse, Pennsylvania, yeah. He was very happy to talk to me about that. We talked a lot about Fenway and how great a dog he was, and I'm sure he was the greatest dog that ever lived. Because Bob was one of the greatest guys I ever ran into, and I'm very, very pleased that I had the chance to work with him. And every night, at the end of the Avalanche games, I'm checking the escalator to make sure they don't get crowded on the escalator going down from club level. And I'll feel a hand on my shoulder. He said, "Larry, are you ready to go?" I said, "Yes, Bob, I'm ready to go." So I'll shake his hand and go and exit out the building. And I had a friend back home 2 weeks prior that passed away, my best friend back in Pennsylvania, and I just came home from that. Then I found out Bob had passed. So I had a double whammy on me, and one of the greatest things that I can say about Bob is that he was a terrific person. And anybody that knows him and know him know that he is a terrific person. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to come up and share any memory?
Hi, my name's John Rayrod. I've known Bob for about 12 years. I worked with him at Coors Field and at the Pepsi Center. The story I want to tell you about was at Coors Field. We both had escalator duty for the game. And I told Bob one day, I said, "Bob, I really need a cigarette." And he said, and I had to go to the smoking area to have it. I couldn't leave my post. So Bob said, "Hey, why don't you try some of my chew?" I said, "Okay, I'll try some." He says, "All you need is a wastebasket to spit in once in a while." So I tried his chew, and boy, I was coughing and choking and spitting in that wastebasket for a long time. And Bob thought to himself, maybe this is a little bit too strong for you. So what he did, he went and bought me some mint flavored chew. So the next game I tried it, and it wasn't too bad. I just had to spit once in a while, but then Bob and I chewed for the rest of the season.
There you go.
Bob, I hope you're in a good place, and I'm going to miss you, but I really am.
In closing, I knew Bob for over 30 years. But didn't know Bob for the last 5 years. Friday nights, it was an annual event for our weekly event for him and my father to meet down at Judgewater and reminiscent about the days of Continental Airlines. Pretty soon it turned into 2 to 3 times a week. We have a day conversing about life and sports and buffs and bantering back and forth about who had the better team and how the Red Sox were going to do. You know, Bob grew up in a generation where the scholars say it was a silent generation, or the lucky few. But the way I look at Bob is, Bob was a man's man. He lived in that generation. Bob always did the right thing. Worked hard. Had respect for his family. Enjoyed and adored everybody. Earned everything that he had. They always say you can judge a man's character by the way he raises his children. Cindy, Connie, Pat, he did a pretty goddamn good job. When we finished up an evening at Edgewater Inn, and it was time to go home, Bob would always seek out me and say, "I'll see you, Corey." And I would respond back to him, "I'll see you, Bob. Be careful going home." One of the things that Bob was so good about and sincere about, and he used a phrase that I will touch on and share. You knew you were in Bob's good graces when Bob would tell you, "He's my friend, Corey's my friend." And he said that one evening, and it'll stick with me for the rest of my life. He didn't say it often, but when he did, it meant something. And you knew it meant something. So today, for the last time, I can honestly say, I'll see you, Bob. You made it home, my friend.
When I was a boy, I would go to sleep, window open, a nice breeze, and the radio on to listen to Bill Reed, and Bears baseball. Surcease the crowd behind. I was in love with baseball. Oh well. Instead, I'm a guitar player. So, you get to sing this one with me. It's kind of obscure, you probably don't know. Take me, that's all. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd. I need some peanuts and crackers.
I want to thank you all for coming. It was wonderful. Was it fun? I mean, sad, but
Bob would have loved it.
Family, Tanya, Pat, thank you for celebrating God's life today. And we're going to have a bigger party over at Edgewater Inn, my dad's favorite hangout, probably 4 times a week. Always Friday night. So we'd all like you to join us over there. And we have maps. It's over in Edgewater. It's like off the 25th and Ames. So if anyone needs a map, we have those. So once again, thank you, thank you, thank you. And that, well, Dad would be